I've opened the PNG we made in the last video in GIMP, and as you can see it's really big. So the first step is going to be to scale it down to something slightly better, and in this case I'll make the height 1080. The next thing I want to do is add an alpha channel. So in my layers panel I'm going to right click and add an alpha channel. Now the next thing I need to do is make sure that my mode is RGB. So under image, choose RGB instead of index. We can then change our canvas size. I'm wanting this to be a desktop wallpaper, and my desktop at home is 1600 by 1080. You'll notice that you can choose where the tree is, on the left, the right, and the middle. I'm wanting to leave it on the left. And I'm wanting to get rid of the white background. So to do that, GIMP will allow me to go color to alpha, and I can choose white, and as you can see when we preview, the white will disappear. If you haven't indexed your image back up in the images area, as in if you haven't changed that to RGB, the color to alpha will be grayed out, and that could be a slight problem. I can go Shift plus to make the image look larger, and I'm also just going to right click and make the image the same size as my layer. I'd like to put a cool gradient background on, which is very straightforward. The first step is to choose some colors, and the next step is to choose a gradient, and we've got several options from linear, bilinear, radial, and so on. The next step is to add an extra layer, and I can call this background. Make sure it's transparent. We want the tree image at the front, the background at the back, and if I draw a line, you can see that depending on where I start will depend on where that color appears. In my layers area, I'm going to add another layer that is white, and I'm going to place it under the background, and you'll see why in a moment. On my background image, I'm going to apply a distort filter, and one of my current favorites is newspaper. I'll change it to intensity, make it a line, and I'm wanting it to be -45 degrees, and you can see how the preview changes, and say OK. And if we want the tree to glow slightly, what we can do is we can go to our tree image and go Layer, Transparency, Alpha to Selection. Then go over to the Select area and feather the selection we just made, and I'll apply a feather of 100 pixels. Then in the Layers area, go to the background and tap the Delete key a couple of times, and then go Control-Shift-A to unselect. And what we have is we have a kind of cool looking tree on a rather cool looking background. If you don't particularly like the glowing tree effect, you can undo the last few moves and you can experiment. And what I've done is I've right clicked and duplicated that tree several times, and if you look at the top you'll see that the first layer is normal mode but 50% opacity, and if I remove it you can see that the tree has gone red, and the reason for that is that the two layers underneath are using soft light, and if I was to get rid of one of them, that was too pale. So I've gone with effectively three things, and again that also looks quite cool. Remember in GIMP that if you do want to export this as a PNG or save it as a PNG, you need to go Control-Shift-E to export. Having said that, it's also a really good idea to save this as an XCF file somewhere safe so that you have your layers data if you're wanting to make further changes.